It's Monday, it's August 21st, 2023. I discovered um, this hour and a half special, which I've only watched like the first 10, 15 minutes of, the Countdown to Disclosure with Dr. Stephen Greer. He says something that is, it, it finally puts for me some context when I study from my nano and I'm looking out in the 718 area code of the borough of Queens, inside of New York. And then I start to look from my nano to a microscopic, and then to a macroscopic, and then to almost the universe beyond, and studying within, like, have I ever questioned the nature of my whatever? Because what's really interesting is the original marriage that I never wanted with Jason, 1976. The original date on that was March 27th, 99. So that was 3/27/99. He later got remarried on a 7/18 um, anniversary date at something called La Mer. Um, I, with the blacksmith, did not want to get married. I held out 5 years. I was hoping he would just disappear, like just go live his best life somewhere else. But um, I waited, and finally we had toilet paper at 5/15/15 on the fifth anniversary. So I plead the fifth on that. Um, but Jason got to live his best life on a 7/18. I don't understand how that ever happened. So I'm kind of just in the Hadron Collider, the LHC kind of a way, knowing that I'm the one who gave birth to the question, to be or not to be. That is the question. Because there's a B, and then there's a pause, and then there's an E. And I arrived on an AIGH, just to speak LHC. And if that theory is not working because of who's involved in it, then I don't know, again, how else to communicate that importance. So I'm going to put on the Stephen Greer in his own words as reference, and then I'm going to pause it and go to something that they um, had today in my compartment at the moment. This morning on the news, the televised news on News Nation, they had a police officer that saw a skunk out in the field, and the skunk had two Dunkin' Donuts cups stuck to its head in the natural world. And the police officer wasn't quite sure how to help this skunk with these two plastic DD cups on its head. Yeah, no, it's really like a crazy UFO world out there. Um, and so they have that as like a reference this morning for whatever's really going on. Um, I did a piece yesterday. I did read the juvenile book to my children. Benjamin brought Ashley over, and so I wanted to make sure that they knew these names. Ben thought he was a musician. I'm like, no. Um, so they, at least I said, here are the children's books I perhaps should have read to you as children. I was like, so you knew? I was like, but I didn't even know that these were like really important things that you probably should know on your journey in this area. So that happened yesterday. So this is what Stephen Greer is saying at the moment.
Briefed the director of the CIA. And that was when I discovered that the nature of the secrecy is so compartmented it is the compartment you're in. And the ones that are special access projects are very restricted. And the ones that are unacknowledged special access projects are off the books. And only the people in that sealed compartment know about what they're doing. And that is how it's structured. And that architecture structure evolved from the 50s forward. And so no president since Eisenhower has had full access to these projects, which is, of course, illegal and unconstitutional, which is why my group, SeriousDisclosure.com, we're gathering together people to change that. But I think the current president has access to a point. But he anyone like that is in a bubble. So, when you enter the White House, I mean, say you're a businessman or a peanut farmer like Jimmy Carter or whatever, you get into the White House, and the people that are surrounding in the national security apparatus, most of them don't know about this issue. The ones that are appointed and come and go every few years. But there's a permanent bureaucracy, a few of whom would be read into or briefed on the subject. But those people will only tell the president what they think the president will respond to in a favorable way for them, strategically. For example, there's been all this information coming out recently about UFOs being chased by our Navy pilots off the coast of California, et cetera. It's all been on CNN, New York Times. Those objects are most likely Lockheed Martin top secret skunk works objects.
A close encounter spotted by a U.S. Air Force pilot off the coast of Jacksonville, Florida.
So that's what they have out on the televised viewpoint. I'm going to pause this for a second, go over to an actual skunk with 2 plastic cups on its head from Double D's and Dunkin' Donuts. And the police officer, like, not knowing how to touch the skunk, but knowing the skunk needs help because these plastic cups are attached to its head. And if the police don't get involved, like, the skunk will die. So there's this like weird relationship, which kind of seems important. I'm just saying, like, if I'm gonna be a ham about it, and like Friendship 7 knows what that means, and it's not a nice terminology, but I really am stuck in a really precarious situation. When I make the switch over on News Nation this morning, it has this symbol in the top. And then it says something about NASA seeks amateur aid for Neptune-Uranus observations.
Probably not going to cut it.
Not gonna cut it.
Close. So close.
Can I help you? Can you help me out?
Okay, call it a very smelly situation. A police officer Maine got a call he was not expecting. The officer had to help a skunk. You can see that skunk there with 2 Dunkin' Donuts. Those are cups just stuck on its head. Thankfully, he was able to free the little guy from the cups and avoid getting sprayed.
Oh. There's something familiar and actually pleasant about a skunk smell to me.
Is there?
Reminds me of somebody I know. Yeah, back in the day.
You must know somebody. That one.
No, it had to bad for this.
So I'm not touching that with a 10-foot pole, but again, well, I'm in a place where one of the phone numbers still has a 718 in this, and just starting to discover like what and why did they choose 718, knowing that this man was brought in on a 718 date in 1921, and knowing from another juvenile book that I'm reading, that on one of these pages, one of these illustrated pages, it says very really on this page, you have to start with one date or one point and then work out. And so I'm just on quantum strings. I'm just saying to myself, right, so why did Jason 1976 from The Crazy Donkey why was he then given a 718 Lemaire date in like Lindenhurst for like a happy go enjoy your life elsewhere? And why was I blacksmithed? I mean, I waited 5 years, but it was a 5:15:15 in like SOS call from like, I don't know, Ham in Friendship 7 back to the 718. Like, I didn't want the first crazy donkey. I definitely did not want the blacksmith. Like, this is not fair to my flower. It just isn't. And I'm the flower that had the B, the BE. So from my AIGH, I gave in the major machine like this, then the B space E. So it seems really significant. What I don't understand is why is the partnership so off and so wrong, and why am I being so dishonored at the same time that they don't speak of this in any context in the area. They also do not speak of this man. Very, like, I have to go and search and seek out US naval, which I didn't even know he was part of the Navy. I don't know how the US military works. Um, we went on Memorial Day. I took one of my sons to the Place of the Fearless, the Intrepid. They had that weekend out some meet and greet, which I did, but none of the US rep or the US cloaked representatives looked anything like descendants of John Glenn or myself. They all looked like countrymen from elsewhere outside of the continental United States of America, like outside of the US Treasury. Like, if we're speaking Federal Reserve note children, it looked like some UN gathering under the US, as far as recruiting for like the next gens. I don't know where my representatives are for like RH sensitivity, and to find healthy cells and healthy tissues to make healthy muscles. Um, it's a real area of concern physiologically and biologically. And I don't know how to speak of this sensitive manner in any other way, to help myself, to help my children. Um, but it's a real area of concern I have. And it's an ongoing concern. It's star 1978, star 8378, Nicole Cattaruzza. It's Earth, solar system, Milky Way, universe, galaxy is broken. And it's Bayside Station, Bayside, New York, 11361. And then to know that 718 Queens Borough has a non-familial cell sitting as a borough president, a non-Federal Reserve note genetic sitting as a borough president in the 718 area code or region, local. Then to know that at a .mil address, there's something that, for lack of a better term, the Bayside Times put it on the front cover, dispensary eyes. But they're what's claiming recruitment status at .mil, and they're non-Federal Reserve US Treasury looking family. They're non-familial. Again, different cells. This is the diversity of the cells. The area borough president that's currently seated with this Mayor Adams in the New York City Citadel position, who's also not a US Treasury family member, and then to have the .mil being what they claim on the front of the newspaper as dispensary eyes, although I don't know if that gets in trouble or entangled in something in somebody else's way of explaining things. But these are signs of a more serious problem. And I feel trapped as like a Federal Reserve note genetic, like at a US Treasury level of genetics, stuck in a 718 area code that I can tie back to he because it's his birth date of when he entered the master machine. Um, but even when I go to like a US like naval day, I'm surrounded by non um, familial members, which I was all right with, like touring the facility in more of like a corporate way with my son. Um, but the amount of times that it's happened and the fact that nobody's coming right out there and speaking, even though we're in the 718 localized area code and they're not even speaking of John Glenn, while management seems to be changing. Like, I don't see if John Glenn has grandchildren, why aren't his grandchildren the forefront of like the borough president and the MIL receiver of inquiry for partnership? Why is it some dispensary eyes based on the New York Times cover? That was the acceptable language. And why is the borough president looking more like Mayor Adams' relative than like a John Glenn relative? Like, these are really confusing at this point inside of the borough of Queens for me. And I don't know how to ask for help or get to help. But as far as cells and healthy tissue, I'm concerned about the status of my familial cells and tissue in like a really concerning way. And I don't know how else to make a phone call from help um, to something that may still exist somewhere in the expanse of space and time. I just don't know where or how. And I don't know what chain of command or appropriate signaling looks or sounds like in this kind of like emergency broadcast kind of a way, um, in order to figure out like where is my offer from, for lack of a better word. Like, Tom Cruise was in a movie called The Firm. Like, where's my, and I only saw like the first half an hour of that where they actually make him the offer. It's the beginning of the movie where it's like the nice house, the nice relationship. It's like the beginnings. Like, where was that for me? Why was that withheld from my person? Why did they switch it up and then some kind of crazy donkey put into the situation that wound up in a March 27th, 1999, or the 3/27/1999, which then later left to a blacksmith, which I waited 5 years on a 5/15/15. And again, like in Navy pilot terms, I had like contact with the first kind, second kind, third kind, fourth kind, fifth kind. I don't know, somewhere around a CE5. I've had those kind of events. Again, because it's that serious. I just don't know. Like, when I met with, let's call him JMG. I mean, I call him Special Task Force Mark because that's what he really looks like a whatever. But when I go to that Special Task Force Mark and I have this conversation with him and he says to me, he already knew about the first date, but what's going on? Like, can I get out of the second date? And I'm like, I don't know. And like, I'm on a stool and he's, I needed a hug. I just needed someone who understood that like I didn't want any of this, and I'm not all right with any of this, and I don't know how to get out of any of this, and I just want him, or someone like I no actually I just wanted him, and I said I how do I mean, like, if I go back I can say I'm not doing, I don't want the 5/15/15. And he says, I think it's already, he's like, I have to check on things. And then I get put back into like this area, and it's like I can't avoid it. I don't know how to get out of it. I'm in that. It's star 1978, star 8378, Nicole Cattaruzza. It's Earth, solar system, Milky Way universe, galaxies broken. And it's Bayside Station, Bayside, New York, 11361.